How? Welcome to my mate John. Say hello, John.
There I go.
So I met John when I got to Blackpool, not straight away. Most people I met in Blackpool I met within the first couple of months in the recovery circles, but John entered recovery after a while. He's a personal friend. I socialised with John outside recovery rooms. Class him as a good friend. He's new around. So John, for people who don't know you, just introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you're about.
Alright, name's John McLean. Just moved up here not long ago from Coventry. Bad addiction problem. And basically was introduced to CA. Got a sponsor and went through the book, and just met Neil through that as well.
Excellent, yeah. So we just want you to relax. We're just gonna have a little chat. So I want to go back a little bit. So I don't know. I'm Liverpool, as you can probably tell by my accent, but like growing up in Liverpool as a young lad, it's got a special place in my heart. That city feels like home. What does Coventry mean to you?
Coventry's always been my home. Like, I was born there, grew up there till I was about 10, and Mum moved us away to countless different places, but I always went back to Coventry. All my family is still there, and I'll consider it home. I know I live in Blackpool now, but I don't really see it as my home. Even though I don't really speak to my family and that anymore, I always look at Coventry as my home.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to come back to Coventry a bit later on because it's just there, but I'll become clear in a minute. So yeah, so what was the life of John like, as a young lad? What was it like when you were young? What of your earliest memories, basically?
It weren't that good, to be honest. Like, my dad was an alcoholic, and he took it out on my mum. And my mum used to move us around from city to city, meeting people that would beat on her, and just move from that place, get away from that person, and move me. Because I had a brother, Daniel, that was with us as well. And just weren't really that good, to be honest. Like, she's the one that kind of introduced me to drugs, because she couldn't handle it. She was a single mother, just me and my brother, and made it hard for her being kids, but she just couldn't take it. So her using was her trying to get away from the stuff like that's happened to her as a child as well, because she didn't have a good childhood, and kind of just rubbed off on us as well.
Yeah, I identify with that, mate, because again, there was issues within my household and my family, early doors, parents split up, and then, although I wouldn't say my parents introduced me to substances, it was on the cusp. I used substances mainly with one parent, but yeah, again, definitely. So I've looked back in my history of with doing this stuff that we do, that I know you do. We talk about it daily. I look back for was I born this way, or did people often say trauma or events, or the uncertainty of childhood. What's your stance on that? Was you born an addict?
No, I don't think I was born that way. There's times I was happy, proper happy. I used to do skateboarding and that, so I was just always out with my friends and that, and we never thought we'd turn to drink or stuff to have a good time. We were just living in the moment. But it's just with the things that were happening at home, as I got older, I mean, my mum left when I was 16. She just disappeared from me and my brother, and then at that point, that's when I started turning to drink. So I think the trauma from childhood events and that's definitely played in my mind, because you don't know how to deal with that as a kid. It just sits with you until you get older, and it just manifests in your head to the point where you're like, why is this happening to me and stuff like that, and then you can't deal with it in your head, so you drink to get away from it.
I identify with that again. So just moving on a little bit. So what was your experience of with school, primary school and up into secondary? Was there any issues going along there?
Yeah, so basically when I was 12, I got moved from Coventry to Cornwall, and in Cornwall my mum started taking Valium and heroin, and then from that I started putting a lot of weight on in school. I might have to just hold it there.
Yeah, no, go on.
So I put a lot of weight on in school. I was really overweight and obese at 12. a lot of bullying happened from that. And then the people around the area I lived in obviously found out what my mum was doing, so I got a lot of stick for that. I wasn't the best dressed or the best well kept, didn't look after myself. So obviously kids in school are going to spot that a mile away and use that against you. And then from Cornwall, I moved up to Scotland. And then me being the English one in a school, 300 kids, 500 kids that are all Scottish. Obviously a lot of racism against English was there. I was still overweight, so I got a lot of bullying from that as well. So from being English, not looking after myself, not being made from money, and being overweight, it was just bad time in school.
Yeah, I get that, 'cause I moved around again, although I didn't have probably a bigger differentiation, a big difference in between like nationalities and areas. Like we still spoke the same and things like that. It was not glaringly up, but that move I always felt like on the edge, not part of. So like I'd be in one area, I was called a certain thing, I'd go to another. I was never like, and I went to school, a posh school, so my experience was different, but they had money, so I was always like on the outside. So on the outside looking in, I was always okay and done well in school and was playing sport and had friends. But inside, that's where the trouble was for me. Did you identify with like unease within yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I always tried to fit in, and I couldn't understand why I didn't. And then obviously that affected my education and that. But as I started getting older, I started realising that they're just going to be that way anyway, so no matter what, I just got to learn to deal with it. And then just knuckled down in school for the last year and managed to get my grades from the bottom to the second highest.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it's right. And that's something, and again, for me, I look back to my childhood, that feeling different is a reason why I used drugs as I got to an adult and I made my own choices. But all that unease, there was no one to blame for that. Kids are kids. I have children today. I do worry about them. There's, especially with the social media side of things, it can. So there's fear to an element. But again, it's kids will be kids, you know what I mean? Obviously, there's some horrific stories you hear in the media. But again, you've just got to do your best. And but yeah, I do think that uneasiness of moving about, of the uncertainty at home, the substances and things like that, and the actual era I come from. I know you're a bit later, but like smoking was common. You were a bit strange if you didn't smoke, you know what I mean? So did you identify with that? So there was a bit of peer pressure growing up. But the biggest thing for me was that unease, not feeling comfortable with myself, and I turned to coffee early doors. That was another thing with the era. The caffeine wasn't really frowned upon. Was there any substances early on with you that you kind of latched onto?
No, not really. I mean, you had the kids that were smoking behind the bike shelters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I weren't popular. They were the popular kids, so I never really stuck with them.
Yeah.
So nothing like that really stuck out to me on that. All I cared about at my childhood was skating.
What, skateboarding?
Skateboarding, yeah. So just that was my whole life for like 12, 15 years as a childhood.
To make me smile. So can you still skate today? Have you?
Yeah, I've still got my old board that I had from like 10 years ago.
Can you go on a pipe and that?
Yeah, they're doing a half pipe. I still can do some tricks now. Nothing like I was before.
Well, watch this space for there's a video coming up. It is right, Joe. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head, that you said you were a larger kid, you know what I mean? Did food a bit of a crutch for you growing up? Is it today?
I've put on weight now, but that's through COVID because I haven't had a chance to move it.
The world's put weight on me.
But as a kid, I just ate out of boredom.
Yeah.
So I weren't eating because of the bullying, because the bullying wanted me to stop eating. You know, and it was just boredom. I didn't want to go out and socialise with other kids because I didn't get on with other kids.
Yeah.
So I just spent my time in the house, and then obviously the more I was in the house, we didn't have like PlayStations and stuff like that. I think I had a little Game Boy, and I weren't allowed to play it because I was playing it that much. So the other time was just spent snacking.
Yeah.
But there was a time before I left school, the bullying got that bad that I fucking starved myself for a year. So basically, I had one tuna salad every lunchtime because I used to get free school meals. Yeah. And that would do me all day, and I'd done that for a year, and the weight dropped off me after about a year and a half.
Yeah, and what age was that? Did you
I
start
was
that year?
15.
50. So you're coming to the end of high school.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. And how did that? So did you consciously remember? Because I do that. I can't, not consciously as like, but like sometimes I really beat myself up over my weight, over my belly. So I half kind of like starve, but I get like anxiety and that. My stomach's constantly rumbled. Do you remember anything from that time?
Yeah,
Any
yes.
uneasiness?
Yeah, there was. I was always tired because I weren't here.
Yeah.
And then that affected my schoolwork because I was falling asleep in class and everything. And nobody knew that I was doing that. But I just wanted to not get picked on. I wanted to be accepted.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that was the only thing, the main thing. I mean, they got over the English thing when I started learning about my history, and it turns out I'm fucking Scottish myself.
How ironic.
Yeah, so it's like when I started telling people my name's McLean, it's a fucking big Scottish name, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it took me about 4 years in school to actually arrive to that point. so the weight thing was just the main issue at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even now when I see that I've put the weight on, I just think, well, I've done it when I was a kid. I can do it again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But the little thoughts come back. You know, I used to go get changed in the cubicle on my own and stuff like that. Do you know?
Yeah.
They do. It does come back to me. Them times never really leave you. Like school can be a very bad time for people. It could be a really good time. It depends on how it goes for you.
Yeah, and you do say, and I say to my kids now, it's the best years of your life, you know what I mean? It's easy for us to say, but like, yeah, it's mad. But again, that's something I want to touch on, because I've seen you at the bag. We've been in the gym only a few times, like, but I've seen you at the bag here. So was there a point, was there an age, was there a place where you kind of felt sod this and started fighting back? There must have been.
Yeah, so at 16, I was in college in Scotland, and I just left because I couldn't support providing for myself and providing for my brother, because my mum was obviously left at that point. I didn't see her for a good 2 years, and obviously social services are trying to get my brother from me and that. So he moved away, and that just left me on my own. So I thought I'd go back down to Coventry to live with my dad, and then obviously I was just a country boy in my head. I didn't know nothing about the street, nothing about how to defend yourself or carry yourself, being street smart, nothing like that. And obviously over the years in Coventry, it's made me realise that I need to take pride in myself and start learning to defend myself. Because me being a country boy in a city can easily get used. A lot of people will just spot you a mile away and get you to do anything you want because you don't know any better. So I thought, I'm not having that. I just started going to the gym about 17, 18, 4 times a week. I started doing boxing at the local boxing club. I fell in love with boxing straight away. I stuck at it loads. I mean, I went from just training with everyone else to being scouted for the Monday night boxing team, which was the amateur boxing, which meant I was going to get fights within about 3 weeks. So that proper gassed my ego up. I thought, yeah, I'm going to head somewhere with this. So I just stuck at that for as long as I could, up until about 23.
So that's amazing. I love boxing. I've never had a contest, so I just want to take back. So like, so you were training, you got picked, you got this opportunity at 17.
Yeah.
What was it like? Just describe to the viewers what it was like training and leading up to that bell going on that first contest.
Yeah, so with me, when big things are happening, when I was at that age, I didn't really understand what was going on. I just thought, I was one-track mind. I was like Forrest Gump. Yeah? So you tell him something, I'll just do it and not think about why I'm doing it until it gets to the time, and then I'm thinking, fucking hell, I've got to fight. But the training aspect of it, I loved it because I could see myself improving. I could see myself doing better than the other kids were doing in a shorter amount of time. So then that kind of gave me a purpose, because when I was younger, I tried to join the army, and then they kicked me out because I wanted to join the army to be with my brother, because he left. And I thought family to me is everything. So it was my job to be the older brother and look out for him. So for him to go to the army, I had to go with him. But I couldn't get into the army because the visual acuity in my left eye, Ministry of Defence ripped me, so I couldn't go. So from that, I needed a purpose, and I didn't have a purpose. So for me to look at how well I was doing in boxing, that made me feel like that was something I was meant to do. Being a young lad as well, I didn't know what direction in life I was going. I didn't want to be a skateboarder anymore, so I just thought, fucking, like, if I'm being really good at something, that might be the direction in life that I need to take.
Yeah.
The first fight as well, good. Like, it was a kid that was younger than me, but he used to punch you up. And he bust my nose and my top lip, and he got really fucking happy about it. And I just watched what he was doing and bust his nose and his lip in one punch, and he just sat back in the corner and never said a word after that, because he was laughing because I was older than him and he pushed me up. So the first fight, and that was good, and I just loved it. Everything about it just made me want to do it even more. But it got to the point, because obviously I was about 23 then, that I had to start working. So the work life slowly took over the free time that I had, and I couldn't do the both. So I had to come out of boxing to start working.
Yeah, so I'm going to come on to work life and history. But first, I want to get back into that boxing. Did you ever, like, so when you're in the ring and it's getting tough and you gas? Because I've sparred, which is obviously probably about 15% of a fight.
Yeah.
And that is horrendous. And I think, what am I doing? What was it like when you're in that fight? I don't know, just try and explain to the viewers, like, what... Did you ever have times where you got a good crack and, like, your heart was being questioned in the ring? You must have had times like that.
Like, it's hard to explain without sounding like I'm big-headed. Like, people have punched me, like, all through childhood, and they've never it's never done anything to me. And I think over the years I've just been hit that many times I don't care, like, and I'll just keep going. But for me, it's I can spot times where he's just landing blows on me and I'm not doing anything. I'm being stupid with it, and I'm throwing, like in boxing, every punch you're supposed to throw. You don't just throw meaningless punches. And there was times in the fight where I was just throwing meaningless punches, and I was getting myself so tired, and he's just flying at me with a barrage of punches, and I'm not knowing what to do, and I'm panicking. Do you know, at that point I'm thinking, well, I need to fucking do something about this, like. But yeah, it's just nothing but an enjoyable experience. But it's hard at the same time to watch what you're doing, realise what you're doing, and then try and think of what you're going to do to them at the same time.
Yeah, again, so I love that, because my experience, like, it's alright hitting pads, love hitting pads, knackers you out. It's good when you'd had a bit of movement, so hitting the pads and moving another level, but when punches are coming back, another level again. But I love it. So what's your thought with boxing? Would you never do it at White Collar? Because I'm itching to do, imagine that, a show with all lads in recovery.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I've done the White Collar boxing in Coventry. Well, I trained for it, and I couldn't sell the tickets because basically they said you have to sell the tickets they give you in order to do the fight.
Oh yeah.
And everyone kept saying, yeah, I'll buy a ticket, but no one did.
Yeah.
But the training and that, I always love it. Even like with you, we're on the bags and that. I love it.
What was it? About 12 minutes we were in there.
Yeah. I can't breathe like I used to.
Yeah, I love it though.
Wheezing.
I never commit to it though. I do it for a couple of times, feel better, get all big old buzz, and I do it with various people. But yeah, let's watch this space, guys. Yeah, so sounds. Before we move on, what's your thoughts? You've got a young lad, obviously. We'll come to him later, but like in depth later. What would you like him to ring? Would you like him to land on himself? What's your thoughts on, or would you like to keep him? Because I know both people, some people who boxed like the kids to follow in the footsteps and put them good in a good stead to defend themselves, and some people like shy away.
Yeah,
don't want them anywhere near it.
I definitely want to put him into boxing. Martial arts as well, but it's not really practical in this day and age. Do you know what I mean? If you know how to take a punch and throw a punch, that is the majority of what's going to happen. I mean, you don't really see many people fly kicking you in the face. Right? But now I get worried as well, because there's a lot of knives, a lot of kids are scared to have fights. Yeah. So the main worry for me is teaching them to read the situation where a fight is possible. If the fight is possible to stop you getting hurt, do it. Yeah. But don't ever start one. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to have my kid to be raised as a bully, but I won't have him, because I took punches and everything. So I know the pain of that, and it takes years for kids to fucking start fighting back once you've been bullied in school, and I don't want that life for him. Yeah, it's not a good life to have. So I'd rather him have the confidence to defend himself when needed. but not just be aggressive for no reason.
Yeah, I'm very similar. But yeah, we'll come back to JJ shortly. Beautiful little boy. So okay, so is the one attack? Because I have this, so this is where the question's coming from. There's one time where it wasn't the first time I drunk, but there was a time where I overdone it, where like my addiction, might say the addiction got the better of me for the first time. I overdosed on it and then I threw up the next day and have you got a time that sticks out where you've overdone it, be it on any substance, and you've like woke up with a bad head or being sick?
Yeah. What my earliest memories
Of like overdoing it on a substance or substances?
Yeah. Well, so basically, I used to drink when I first started drinking. I used to drink with my friends in the graveyard with fucking Frosty Jacks. 3 litre bottle of Frosty Jacks, and it'll share between us. About £3.50, I think it was, for a big bottle. And then at that point, I've moved on to Bucksfast, which is like lethal tonic wine in Scotland. And I drank a bottle of that. 1 bottle of that is enough to put anyone on their ass. And I was running around the town with trousers around my ankles.
Wow.
And I couldn't remember it until everybody the next day was telling me what happened. And the fact that it was the first time that I couldn't remember what I did.
Yeah.
And it scared me because I had no control of what I was doing that night.
Yeah.
So that worried me a lot after that first time.
I think the first time I blacked out is etched on my memory. First time when you're getting told what you've done. And my first blackout wasn't... I had times where I'd drop my keks and wet myself and things like that in the future. But that first one, it wasn't any excessive bad behaviour. But the freak, the scaredness.
Yeah, the fear of not knowing what you've done.
Yeah, and kind of when I was going out for a drink, I was always edgy, thinking, is tonight good? Because I've had times where I've woke up in a cell and not known. Yeah, so that blackout, so you're the same as me on that. I identified it. That blackout and drinking is scary.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's exactly what was going on. So I want to get a bit more positive now. So obviously, so you went back to Coventry at 16, did you say, with your dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was life? What happened then? So I imagine, did you have friends you previously knew, or was it a whole new zone for you? Was it all new time?
So I left Coventry when I was about, I don't know, something like 10, something like 10, 11. And when I went to Coventry, I thought I might know the people that I went to school with. But I was quickly shocked that all the lads that I went to school with were in a gang. And they didn't know me, they didn't know my family name, but they knew my dad. Because obviously my dad's never moved from the area that he's lived in his whole life. So I quickly got told that your name in the area is important to you. If you're a no one, then you're going to get a hard time. So I've had times where I've told the lads that I went to school with, they obviously haven't recognised me because I haven't been around for a few years. My family name, they've not recognised it. I've been punished up from it. And then afterwards, they've been told from friends of the family that who I am, and they've fucking regretted it afterwards. Wow. But I've sat there myself thinking like I was getting punched up in Scotland. Now I've come down to Coventry, I'm getting punched up in Coventry. But it's like I said, to learn to be street smart. So even though bad things happened to me when I first moved down to Coventry, it gave me an education that is more valuable to me than an academic one, in my point of view. Yeah. Because to read situations, to read people, to be street smart in this day and age can save your life. If you're in a situation where you need it and you don't know what you're doing, it can quickly turn bad for you.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so then, so coming back at that time, 16, all this turmoil, and you used substances by then. I don't know, in this gang, I want to explore that. What happened? Have you got a mate that you got? Was he a friend you made from that time who's still got a special place in your heart? Yeah,
so from my dad's, me and him didn't get on. So I moved to a hostel for under 21s. And I stayed there for a few months. And then in that time, I met a black lad from London called Wilfred. And me and him just started getting on over playing fucking Pro Evo on PS2. And then he moved out to his own shared house. and they just left me there. And he liked it because I could play guitar. And everyone else hated that I played guitar because I'll be up till 3 in the morning playing, waking everybody up. But it comes to a point where I was kicked out of the hostel and they moved me to a shared house, and it was the same shared house he was in. So I thought, fucking buzzing, because I already knew him. And then over a few months, he grafted me into all his mates. And then it quickly comes to a point I was the only white person in the fucking like gang at 22. And then from then they got me into like smoking weed, and then from smoking weed, selling weed, and then selling hard drugs. But I already been around cracking heroin from my mum taking it, but from the selling point of view, I thought that I might have a personal stance of not doing it because I seen my mum do it, but that didn't even matter to me. I just didn't have no direction in life, and I loved spending the time with all them and feeling like I was part of something, because I wasn't a part of school. I wasn't a part of a lot of friends outside of school in my childhood. So at this point, I finally felt a part of something at the time, but obviously I didn't realise they were just using me to do what they wanted me to do to better their positions.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was great. I still have no regrets about it now, to be honest.
Yeah, so what would you say, so obviously, so from that age where you met Wilfred, entered this gang life, how long was you involved in the gang world, and what's your take on it now when you look back on it? You said
I was in there about 6 years. I knew him, and he was the top boy of the gang, and I was his younger, so nobody could do anything to me without going through him first. And then the other gangs in the area were like, why are you with them? Like, you should be with us. And so I was constantly getting approached by people and trying to get attacked by people because they see me as the weakest link, like the little white boy, that won't be able to defend himself. But the gang life in itself, for the selling and stuff like that, I loved it. Like, I didn't see the films or anything like that. I weren't inspired to be that person before that happened. But I was just going with it. And then the fact that I started selling, and then I started selling more than my older. I started selling more than anybody in the gang. And then they started sending people to try and rob me without me knowing. So then that kind of fueled my ego even more, because they've put me on and I'm doing better, and now they're shitting it and they want it back. And I'm like, you just need to listen, because I was the person to always sit and listen to everybody else talk, and I never spoke a word. And then from that, I could learn who I could trust, what I could do with certain people and stuff like that, and make my position better than everybody else's. Not in a snaky way. I never snaked anybody out. I never done anything behind anyone's back. It was just, I listened and done things the way they could have done it, but they haven't. You know? And that I loved it. I loved the whole fact that I was becoming better than them. And I loved the fact that they hated it. But obviously, it started getting to a point where I had to move out of the area because they were sending people to do this and that, and it wasn't safe for me to be around these people anymore. So the people that I called my friends, and because that's how they make you feel like you're part of a family. You still do it now with kids now. They'll get you stuff, and then you'll do something with them that you shouldn't be doing, but then they'll make you feel like you're part of that something and proper gas you up. And then at the end of it always happens the same with anyone, any gang, anything. At the end of it, you'll soon realise that what you were doing for them the whole time is just, they were using you. That's the whole thing. And then you come to I came to my senses and told them to fuck off and stay away from me and that. And then at that point, it turned ugly. So it happens every time. There will always come a time where that will happen. You either enjoy it as it is or see it for what's going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I imagine this is the time when substances started increasing in your life. That's a question I'd like to ask. Did you make money from selling drugs, or was it more just you had all the drugs around it? Was it to be one or the other?
I made money from selling, but...
Personally, or was it taken from you?
What do you mean?
Did you make them? Did you earn the money and have it for you to spend, or did you make it for others?
Yeah, so I was making it for others, and then that's when I took the line off them, and I made it better than it ever was, and then it was all mine then, and they hated it, so they thought I had to pay them because they passed me the line, but really they couldn't manage it properly, and they needed it to continue, so they thought if they gave me the line, I would still pay them money all the time. So even though they're not doing anything to earn it, they wanted me to earn it and take all the risk and pass their money for it. But then it just got to the point where the person that I was doing it for saw that I was doing it better, and it was just me exclusively. And that's why they hated it, because they weren't part of that circle anymore. But at that point, that's when, with the money and like the little celebrity status in the area that I was, that I started meeting people that were taking coke and stuff. So then that's how that got introduced into my life.
Yeah.
Because I never thought about doing it. I always said I'd never do it. I'd never ever try Class A's ever. I used to smoke weed, but it was never Class A's. And that just got introduced to my life with the more people that I met. Yeah. Slowly, it was just pushed in my face every time.
Yeah. Do you remember your first line of cocaine?
Yeah, never forget it.
Talk us through the event and all.
So basically, I had a couple of younger lads working for me at one point, and we all swore that we wouldn't take it. And then this one lad, that he was like a proper straight edge, you wouldn't think he'd try anything. And he come back one day with his friend that I knew, and he was wired up. And he's like, "John, just take it. It's fine." I thought this little kid, like, fucking straight edge to hell. And he's just threw away all them things that he said he weren't going to do, and he's done it. And I was like, I caved in after a few drinks. I did, caved in. I took that one, felt that surge. And it's like, because I spent my whole life not speaking, I spent that whole night telling everybody everything about my life. Like, I said my life story to about, because I had a house party, so there was about 9-10 people in there, in a little bed set. Told everyone my life story at least twice. And I just couldn't stop speaking. And made plans to start businesses with everybody and stuff like that. Just like the typical things that you do.
Yeah, and again, I've just niggered there, you know what I mean? I have a similar experience here, but it was negative. I want to get you straight to the point now, straight on to the viewers. When did that boomerang of that enjoyment, that party, that talking come back and chop you in half, which I know it did? Tell us that. I want to jump to that event now. Like, when did you realise, oh my God, I need to put this down, and you realised you couldn't?
Yeah, so there would come times where we'd all plan to have a drink, and then it would be like, shall we get a bag? Or shall we do that? Like, it was an option to do that. And then it comes to a point where it's like, we couldn't have a drink without that. Yeah. And then it got to a point after that where I was getting the bags before the drink. And then it got to the point where I was using the bags before I even got to the house where I was supposed to have a drink at. Do you know what I mean? And then, so at that point where it was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and everybody's telling me to go, and everybody's telling me to get my head down and leave, go home. I think the girl at the time was ringing my phone, and I just I wanted more. I would not stop. I would have gone, if I had the money, I would have done 3 or 4 days. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was one day, then it was a 2-day sesh, then it was a 3-day sesh. But at the 3-day sesh, I was so tired I couldn't hardly stand. I couldn't drink anymore, and I couldn't get anything more up my nose, but I still wanted more. Do you know what I mean? And birds are tweeting, days are coming and going and everything. People are like dropping off because they can't keep up. Because I always prided myself on being the last one standing. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then that's when I got to the point where I just thought, like, I never knew I was like this. It was just that realisation moment, like, maybe, like, why am I the only one standing all the time? So I was thinking, why is everyone else going home but I'm staying here? I still want to get on it.
Similar story. I was never successful user. I'm different in the fact I was never a successful user. I'd always go excessive, quick, hard, fast, and end up being erratic and bad behaviour. So I was different in that sense. But before we move on to the positive and moving forward into recovery in your life today, what was it like with the gang? How did you get away from the gang? Was there any times where you thought your life was in danger? Let's have it straight.
Yeah, so I'd have my window smashed every so often. My house turned upside down, and I'd stash things in my house, and I'd come back and it'd still be there. So I sat there laughing, like, even though they're trying to rob me, they still can't find it, and it's still in the house, and they haven't seen it. but then I'll let pieces of information slip to different people, and then what has come back, I know has come back from a certain person. So then I realised that my older that I used to work for and be with, and learn from, he was sending people to rob me because he didn't like the fact that I wouldn't give him money every time. So then he sent a person to my house that we both knew, and he said, listen, you have to start paying him this amount of money or this is going to happen. And he tried coming to my house, and a little scrap happened. I sent him back out the house. And then that's at that point he started getting people, youngers and other lads around the area to keep putting heat on me and attempt to rob my house, attempt to cause me harm, which resulted in me. So I'm not going around saying I'm hard. I was a businessman. I went to earn money. Do you know what I mean? I weren't here for gang warfare and stuff like that. That wasn't what I was about. Because my dad lived in the area as well. So anything I did to other people, they'd use my dad to get to me in an instant. And I didn't want that for him. So I just left the area for a couple of weeks to try and let it calm down. Came back and it did calm down. One of the lads that were sent round to my house, he ended up going to jail. And my ex-older, whatever you want to call it, he got sent down for doing some silly stuff. Was put on Facebook and everything. So that kind of gave me breathing space. But then, with my starting to use coke, pardon me, I got arrested the first time. The second time, first time I bought coke, I didn't even take it because I got arrested in Jack's toilets, about to rack up my first line. The security guard comes in, takes me out, and then at this point I've got all these other Class A's on me because I used to go town and sell while I was in town, and then while I'm selling, I'm using the money to get more drinks. So it's just like this mad lifestyle. But yeah, they took all the drugs away from me, and I had to ring up the person I was working for after they let me out of the cell and said, listen, this is what's happened. He said, you can't do it no more. He says, whatever money you've got left, bring it back to me, give me the phones. And from that, it just died out from that. And then I ended up going to work legit. So I think in a way, it was a sign from where I was headed, because when I first started it, nobody knew. Then more people knew, and more people knew because people talk. And the life I was living was more lavish. So then people started seeing where I was getting money, and then people started trying to take that away from me. And then the police get involved ultimately at the end. And obviously the guy, he's successful in what he does because he doesn't let it come to that or let it get past that. So he just took what he needed from me and started again with someone else. And then that was the end of it for me.
The phrase chewed me up and spat me out rings to mind.
Yeah, it's the same process of things to happen in that lifestyle, that criminal selling, gang, whatever. That it always happen in that way. All the time.
So, right, I want to move on now. I want to get a bit more positive. So today, it's not like that today. So that's a bit of the chaos, the old life, which we all have similar. Call it war stories, a lot of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to start coming on to like where the events, the stuff that happened that brought you to this room today. So what can you describe the first time you met Carla and like just explain it, what happened? Carla is your partner, by the way.
Yeah. So first time I met her was on BBM. Do you remember BlackBerry Messenger?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it was on that. And then I met her in town as a social meet. Started to meet her at her house. I met her mum the second time I ever met her. So I was like thrown in the deep end. And we didn't get on with the family at all because I was arrogant. I had money, thought I was something special. But I something about her, I just liked her. I just liked her. She was different. She weren't sleeping about. She was innocent. Do you know what I mean? And anyone from the road and that, you want them innocent ones. They're the ones that you put your attention on because the other ones you can't trust. But yeah, she just changed me over the years. Changed me a lot. But with my addiction, that stayed through me with the drinking and stuff like that. It stayed with me.
Yeah.
But moving up to here, obviously, I was already coming to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore, and I couldn't carry this life anymore because I had a son at this point, my son JJ, and I started feeling like I shouldn't be doing this at my age. I should be being a better dad. I should be being a better partner. I mean, it's just dedicated years of my life, and I've just gave it the same shit all the time because I haven't dealt with it personally. I've just kind of thought, oh, you don't understand what it's like for me, and why is no one feeling sorry for me or trying to understand how I'm thinking. So then one time, the last time I went out for a drink, it was bad. People put out knives and strangers in some flat I don't even know. I was kicked out, stayed in the car for 2 days. And then it's not as grand or as massive big deal as what other people would say, but for me that was enough. And I went to a CA meeting in Lytham, and my missus' dad was there, father-in-law, and he said, listen, you need a sponsor. And he spoke to a sponsor, said, there's someone there that can sponsor you. And I thought, yeah, do you know what, because I used to go to meetings before, the odd DAA meeting every now and again, but then I fell off that because I thought I knew what I could manage it, and obviously I was quickly mistaken, and I ended up going through the work with the sponsor, and yourself got me a book, you know. So if that isn't something telling me that to help me, give me like, you know, little directions, little help in life from outside influences and that to help me along this path, then I don't know what is.
Yeah. Again, and we've got to come back last 10 minutes. I just want to go back now. So again, that's exactly where I want to go. I want to bring it up today. So I love that little story meeting Carla, and it's like the rest history, if you like, you know what I mean? So we'll come up a bit more present day. What I want now, I want to speak about your dad, because I identify with you when we talk about this.
Yeah.
So just describe like your relationship with your dad, what he meant to you growing up, and ultimately, and just keep it specific, because then we're going to lead to where it's took you and where you are today with it.
Yeah.
So specifically, what did your dad mean to you growing up, and when did you realise you started having issues?
Yeah, so what, with my dad having issues?
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, because I'm relating it back to my story. I remember, well, I won't share my story just yet. My interview will be on eventually, but yeah. So what your relationship was like with your dad, what you thought of him, and when you realised there was an issue, basically.
Yeah, so I was always a daddy's boy from birth. Like, always loved him. I grew up seeing him, what he did to my mum. And then my mum moved us away for years. I didn't see him for like 10 years. But then when my mum left me and my brother, the only person, I still had his address in my head. It weren't written down or anything. I just knew it off by heart from a child in Coventry. So I went down to see him. I ain't seen him for years. And he was there. So even though he wasn't the person that I grew up to love as a kid because of what I seen him do, and I didn't have respect for him for that, but he was the only other parent I had to go to. Yeah. So when I went down there, and he quickly showed me that he was remorseful for the things that he did. A lot had changed from that time to, he's obviously become older and more regretful, I think, because at that point we're not having me and Daniel there. And my mum, it's obviously, that's kicked him in the bollocks to say that he's lost everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I gave him a chance. From that, it's just the fact that he was there for me when my mum wasn't. And even though my mum slated him into the ground, he was still a parent that was there, because that's what you're there for. When you're a parent, the least you could be is there for your kids. Do you know what I mean? That's the least thing you can do. You don't fucking run away from them and leave them and not even ring them to see if they're getting on well, like being 15 and 16. So my dad was there and he taught me everything. He taught me being street smart. He taught me about fucking working for the stuff that you need to get in life. You need to work. He taught me how to be a man. I had no father figure when I was young, and my mum was doing her best, but it didn't work out for her. She couldn't, she struggled. And I adored him. There was no one on this person, even now, that I love more than my dad. But as I come of age, I wanted to be part of his friends, because they all seen me growing up as a kid. They all knew me, but I didn't know them. And then I was coming up into a young man, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I used to go drinking with him. At that point, I'd only have 2 cans, so I'd be fucking steaming. But and all of his mates would take the piss out of me because I didn't understand the word they were saying. But it's just growing up to be a part of them people, and they were good people. They looked out for me. They looked out for my dad. We were a proper old school family. But then obviously it got to a point where we'd sit in the kitchen and we'd run out of money, or there'd be no money and no drink, and we wouldn't know what to say to each other. And then that kind of hit home for me, do you know? Then I started to stop drinking more at my dad's house because I thought we should have something to speak about without a drink being there. Do you know what I mean? But I wouldn't take any of it back. The greatest memories we've had is been sitting there pissed up trying to play drafts or something in the living room. Like, it's just everything to me, man.
Yeah. And I'm not going to labour this week because I thank you for talking about it, know what I mean? I'm still coming to terms with mine. Because essentially this channel, the official recovery channel, is about recovering from grief for me. Yeah, it's the warpness of my grief that I was spasmed into with my dad's death through alcoholism has brought the pain of it, has got me here today. I've still not grieved properly. Yeah, so I don't want to labour. Thank you for what you've talked about. So again, let's go. I'm just going to take you specifically because I'm just conscious of time. So we passed your dad. You don't mind me saying that? Yeah. Do you remember the day you passed or the day you buried him? Well, just to explain that time, because it was my experience. That was a horrendous time for me.
Yeah. So even now, when I think of my dad, it's like I speak about him in the present tense. A lot of the times. So it's like in my head, I still hasn't come to terms with the fact that he's fully gone. So when it comes to burying him, that was like a final thing, you know, to say like he ain't coming back. This is actually happening.
Yeah.
You know? And I never felt so alone in this life, because when my mum left, I always knew I had my dad. Even though I wasn't with him at that time, I just knew there was another parent there. But after my mum, I completely disowned her. I don't want to know her. So for my dad to leave, that just put me into the point where there is no one in this world for me. And the fact that my dad understood me better than anybody. Like, I could speak to people, even my partner now, she still doesn't understand me like my dad does. So I could never talk to someone in the same way as I do that when I talk to my dad. Yeah, because nobody else would understand. So I felt once he finally left, I felt no one will understand me for me. Or no, like the unconditional love part aspect of it. Yeah. No one will love me for who I am. He just loved me because I was me, I was there. You know? And not for what I could do for him or what I could get for him, what I could, and to better his life in any way. It's just me turning up, having a couple of cans, that made his day and that made my day. So for that to be taken away, I mean, that spiraled me out of control for years.
Yeah.
And I never, like, because I had a family, I had my son, I had commitments to work. I felt like I couldn't breathe because every time I wanted to go out and drink and forget it, people were like, yeah, but you have to do this, you have to be there for that, you can't let it go down the drain. I'm like, well, can't I just fucking sit back for 1 minute and just try and block this feeling out of my head? You know? And it was frustrating to be in that point of life.
Yeah, I want to thank you again, mate. I'm not going to labour it too much, but I'm 2.5 decades on from my dad's death. I'm going for counselling the next couple of weeks to finally put a line. And I feel your pain, mate. So I want to say that I feel it. My dad was my hero, and to watch him disappear through substances, to evaporate to nothing, and I deny he's dead. Exactly the same. So I'm not going to move on. I'm going to move on. I want to get positive now to end for the last 10 minutes. So you found the runes, mate. I class you as a friend now, know what I mean? What was your experience of your first meet? I know you didn't quite get the first one, but let's talk about your experience that led you to getting a sponsor. So that we're talking about that time coming into, you've been into the room before, but coming into that room with that feeling that we've all had, where you're like, I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah. So after that, the night that happened was like 2 nights or something when I used. I was just feeling empty inside, and I've just thought like this is going to be my life now, and it needs to change. And when I went into the room, I didn't really think about what anyone else is thinking of me. I just thought that if this is what needs to happen, I need to do it. You know, because that is, people were telling me like, this, people are going to judge me. I know people are going to judge me on anything, even if they say it or they just think it. But I'm going in there for me. I'm going in there for my family. So I never really thought about what anyone else was thinking of me. I just thought, I didn't understand it. People were talking about God and stuff like that, and I thought, I don't know what to think about that whole situation. But if to go there, because the meetings filled me with some sort of happiness as well. But I was doing it properly this time. I went to speak to the sponsor. I went to get a book. I didn't know what was going to happen from that, but I just know that these steps needed to be taken.
Yeah, amazing. And then, and obviously, so like, what was the biggest like shock? So I don't know. There's many. I heard in the rooms often there's big shocks, like your first time you spoke or the first time you identify. What's like your prevalent memory from them early days of that second time coming round? Like, is there anything that really jumped out at you? A message or the time you spoke?
I've said it a couple of times. So I've been in the kitchen with Carla, and I think I was going through step 2 or 3. And I stood there, and the telly was on, my partner was talking. And then I just stood there and I was like looking into my own, listening to my own head. I don't know if you do that sometimes.
Yeah, I know. It
might sound mad to people, but I was just trying to listen, and because normally it's just fucking millions of things going off at once, and there was nothing, not a single thing. I blocked out the telly, blocked out my partner. There was nothing in my head. There was peace, and I sat there and my mouth dropped. And even now, like, I get goosebumps thinking about it. Like, my whole life is spent with just shit in my head. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. It's past stuff, future stuff, things that have happened, traumas, everything. Like, people fucking crying in my head, screaming at the people that I've hurt. Everything's just spinning around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And for me to just stand there and realise there's nothing in my head, this inner peace, that fucking changed. My tears dropping from my eyes. I was like, how or why? Like, I've heard people in the meetings talk about peace. You will find peace if you carry this on. And at that moment there, I had it another time after that as well, because I was still just baffled about how this noise has gone. Like, for years, 10, 15 years, I knew it was there, and the only way to get rid of that noise was to use. But for now, for that one time, I stood in the kitchen, I've worked a program only on step 2 or 3, and I had peace in my head. And that's just what solidified for me that I will always do this work, because that is just something that no one else could ever take that away. That noise in your head, and to have that gone, it's a fucking miracle, man.
Yeah, I agree. That when that washing machine stops, it's amazing. Yeah, so again, I'm just conscious of time, so I want to wrap up now. So can you give, so obviously today, I don't know the exact date, but it's October 2022. If you could give a message to your 16-year-old self from the stuff you know today, from finding recovery, the pain of your dad, what would be that message you give to any 16-year-old really, but to like the 16-year-old you?
I would say enjoy the time with your loved ones as much as possible, because they're not always going to be around, but learn from them. Make sure you learn from them, and when they're gone, because they are going to go, you need to get that into your head that there is going to be an end game for them. Yeah, it's not going to be good, but make sure that you do them proud. You learn you take what you've learned from them and use it to be a better person than they was. Yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to be a better person than they was. And don't ruin your life over death, because everyone says you move on from it, and you will not think that you can, but you do. You do move on from it. So just take that and try and use that in your lives, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that. And again, I'm not going to labour too much with it. That's exactly the message to what I wanted with the Recovery Channel. That death occurs, death is a fact of life. And essentially you either pass away. I don't mean to be glum. You either pass away or you deal with grief in whatever way form that takes. If you don't deal with the grief well, you will end up in hurting the loved ones around you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I love that final note, mate. So I'm not going to labour it. Thanks for being here today, mate.
No worries.
So again, there's a little spin-off which I'll speak to you in a bit about. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. So the channel's back up and running now. There's going to be plenty more interviews. So if you like that, like, subscribe, and watch out for more. See you later. Say how, John.
Oh.
Yes, man.